Hi, this is the lesson for Monday, September 28th for 11th grade English. Hello. Today we're going to look at Native Americans. This is really the last week of our Native America unit, and we're moving to early colonial America. So you're going to hear me talk about colonies, colonial spirit, colonists. We're starting to get into that world. We're going to start with a poem from Macbeth, move into some direct instruction from me, where I tell you very explicitly what I think is important to know about this unit. And then the stem for today is the Virginia Company sailed to the Virginia colony in 1607. I want you to write that in your document, your big Google Doc. And that's going to capture a lot of what I'm talking about in my direct instruction. Lastly, you'll have a choice of what assignment you're going to read to get ready for tomorrow. We're going to have a group quiz. And the quiz is a reading passage from Pocahontas. So either of these choices, it doesn't really matter which one you pick. Either is going to prepare you for that, so you have a little more background knowledge going into it. So first, an excerpt from Macbeth. I picked Macbeth because this was written in 1606, and the era we're in is 1606, 1607. That's when the Virginia Company leaves England and goes to the New World. So this is a contemporary moment. I'm going to get to a famous passage in Macbeth and then explain a little bit about what's going on here. So this is the three witches who are kind of famous in Macbeth. They say, double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Scale of dragon, tooth of wolf, witch's mummy, maw and gulf, of the ravened salt sea shark, root of hemlock, digged in the dark, finger of birth strangled babe, ditch delivered by a drab, make the cruel thick and slab, add thereto a tiger's chaudron for the ingredients of our cauldron. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble, cool it with a baboon's blood, then the charm is firm and good. By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. Written, of course, by, here we have his signature, William Shakespeare. So I know when I was in school, I couldn't really connect the world of William Shakespeare to anything, really. I just knew he wrote a really long time ago. And he did, but it helps me now to realize he was writing in London at the exact same time that down the street a bunch of guys were getting together and hopping on a ship to head over to the New World, where they were trying to start a colony. They were contemporaries. The word I have in my slide here is contemporary there, which just means at the same time. And the king is James, King James I. He is the successor to Queen Elizabeth, the one who was famously called the Virgin Queen, and that's why Virginia is named Virginia, for virgin. The word in there is named for Queen Elizabeth. So all of that is happening right at the same time, and thus the poem for today. I also love that creepy poem. It's almost October. We're getting ready for that kind of spooky season, and the diction in it really pops from Macbeth. So we're going to learn, as we already started to, because I started to talk about it, a little bit about Virginia in those early days. Your task is to take this in, retain as much of it as you can by attaching it to other pieces of background knowledge that you have. Be prepared to answer your sentence stems so that you understand well what is happening before and after the Virginia Colony Company begins their work here in the New World, as they called it. Coexistence in Native America, tracing the first confrontations between Native Americans and colonists. In class, we briefly talked about the assignment that was due today. So what should you know about Virginia Indians and British colonists? I have it here in a sentence. They lived alongside of each other and had a diplomatic relationship. I think sometimes it's tempting to reduce history to the simple story of good and evil. And so we like to say that the British came and they just destroyed the Indians, but that's not exactly what happened. The Virginia Indians were really savvy and saw these new people coming and tried to develop a good trading agreement with them and a good relationship with them. It wasn't always civil in those early days, but they they generally and gradually reached some peace before it all fell apart pretty profoundly. Still, the early days is what we're talking about right now. So we'll have this group quiz tomorrow about the Pocahontas reading that you do today, and also the information I give you about Pocahontas. The new concept to guide this work this week is this concept of ethnocentrism, which just means that you tend to evaluate other cultures according to the preconceptions originating in your culture. And we all do this, but it causes conflict. If I am to look at a culture different from mine and say, well, this culture over here is lesser than mine because I judge it on values of materialism or on the values of whether or not they have good weapons, which is what the British would have done to the Indians. So that is ethnocentrism, and we're going to see it everywhere. We're going to see it from the British towards the Indians, and we're going to see it from the Indians towards the British. I have these questions at the bottom. What does it mean to believe yourself to be exceptional, the best? How does it influence your values and your actions? So those are the questions I want us to consider as we look at all of these ways that interactions were happening between Indians and colonists. Focus here on Virginia. Why is it named Virginia? And I just explained that. It doesn't have Native American origins. It comes from that word virgin in reference to Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth I never married, so she was famously called the Virgin Queen, and that is where we get this state name. And you're going to see a lot of the state names on the eastern seaboard have British origins, not Native American origins, which is different as you move to the Midwest and the West. What Native American tribes were in this state and what colonist settlements were in this state? Well, here are the tribes. In this area, Albemarle County, Amherst County is where they're based. The Monacan Indians have their home. And there are a few other tribes as well. You probably have heard of the Cherokee. They were a pretty major tribe in American history for setting out some of the rights that they deserved. And we might read something from them later when we get into westward expansion. And over here on the right is the Powhatan chiefdom. That will be the spirit of our talk today. You might know the name Powhatan. We play them in football. Other sports, we play them in all sports. They're not too far from here, and they get their name. That city still gets its name from the chief who was the ruler of this entire territory, Chief Powhatan. Here he is on the right. And there's a typical, village. There we go, over here on the left. It might have depicted what might have been a kind of settlement in the Powhatan region. You can see some little things here, a fire in the middle, and we talked a little bit about how important fire was to early Indian societies. You have a bow back here. Bows were a really effective weapon that the Indians were able to use and harness. John Smith is one of our famous colonists who first came to the area, and here's what he had to say when he met Chief Powhatan. He is of parsonage a tall, well-proportioned man, his head somewhat gray, his age near 60, of a very able and hardy body to endure any labor. So John Smith meets Powhatan and is impressed. This guy holds himself up very well. He's very regal in the eyes of the colonists. It's not that they saw him and thought, savage, Indian, don't care about this guy. They saw him and immediately realized the respect that he deserved from them, and John Smith established a really cordial relationship with him. His territory was called Senecomoko, and it's what Pocahontas is going to reference tomorrow in the reading that we have from her. He ruled over about 15,000 people and 30 other tribal groups. His daughter, Pocahontas, was a spirited, mischievous girl who loved to learn. And this is where they were when the British arrived onto the scene in 1607. Pocahontas, a girl of about 11, her dad, Chief Powhatan, who was impressive and ruled over the whole region. So I'm going to show you some clips from the Disney movie Pocahontas, which is all sorts of problems with its historical depictions, but it is useful for dramatizing what I'm saying in a way that maybe will be a memory for you if you've seen this before, and if not, we'll just watch it and see. I like this. It's not perfect, but if you have these images in your mind, you wouldn't be completely wrong. John Smith, this adventurer, this rugged man who had won over his crew. Governor Percy, this well-to-do, wealthy man who was out of touch, and certainly once he got to the New World, would not know how to cultivate the land or fish for dinner. He was the man who came in on the coach. And that is in fact what happened. So here's a chart showing all of the arrivals into Jamestown from the British shores. It starts here in 1607. There's just not that many people on that first voyage. But then word gets back that there is land and maybe even a path to the Pacific. And so this number goes up. And as it goes up, the number of deaths raises exponentially. Because even though there was a lot of fishing to be had in the Chesapeake Bay, a lot of the men who came over didn't really know how to lift a finger. This document reveals that. I did a think aloud with your class, so I'll do a little bit of that here. Why did the early settlers die so quickly? Let's find out. The Virginia Company would have its initial public stock offering at 12 pounds 10 shillings a share. British, English, America was a corporation before it was a country. But few of those investors were actually on those ships. The colony's ultimate success would come at a fearsome price. Disease, hunger, and hostile natives left behind a toll of misery and death. Most of the 105 adventurers who went on the ships would be dead within a year. It's amazing the settlement survived at all. The alien territory of Virginia would have been a challenge to the best of explorers, but the 1606 expedition, by and large, was not made up of the best or the brightest. Half of the colonists were gentlemen, upper-class indolents, which means lazy people, who literally would not work to save their own lives. This is a little aside about a gentleman is instructed to do nothing, not lift a finger. So the gentlemen of Jamestown, instead of helping to find food for their colonists and for their colony, were more interested in bickering with each other and pointing fingers, except John Smith, and he's the topic of the next document. The survival of this small English outpost was thanks mostly to two extraordinary people, one a commoner and one a royal. The commoner was Captain John Smith, a soldier with an impatient nature and a lack of respect for his social betters, or anyone who had not proven himself. And the royal was Pocahontas, the beautiful, headstrong daughter of the most powerful chief in Virginia. So John Smith is this rugged man who actually can lift a finger and hunt and fish and make treaties with the local peoples. And so he does that when he gets to Jamestown, thankfully, or they would have all died off. Meets Chief Powhatan and her daughter and all of Powhatan's family and endears himself to them. And they strike up a good trading relationship with John Smith and his people. So here is your stem for today. The Virginia Company sailed to the Virginia colony in 1607 because, so, but. So, as we've been doing, just copy and paste this sentence stem 3 times and end it 3 different ways to show me your understanding of the direct instruction I've just given. And here's the homework for tomorrow. Now, there's no writing with this. I just know that knowing a little bit more about Pocahontas is going to help you on this group quiz tomorrow. So you can either pick choice one, which would mean you click on these 2 little clips. It takes you to a page, and you'll want to press click clips, watch clips, and it'll show you a 2.5-minute thing. Or this article, an interview with a Pocahontas scholar, is also really good. So pick one, just prime yourself on it to help with tomorrow's group quiz, which is tomorrow. Thank you.